Hello and welcome to episode 7 of This Is Not a Book Club. Welcome back. I feel like we don't actually introduce ourselves. So my name is Salim.
And my name is Javad.
And we host the podcast.
Yeah.
I
think that really added so much value.
It's important. I mean, we have to be professional.
Later on, people watching were like, there was a pivotal moment in the history of the podcast. Episode 7, something changed.
People were speaking, but we didn't know who they were.
Yeah.
We didn't know why they were speaking.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking, is there anything housekeeping-wise that we need to tell people?
The emergency exit doors?
No, like life updates, podcast is there anything?
We have thumbnails now on YouTube.
Oh, we have new thumbnails. Yeah, if you're listening to this, by the way, because I remember someone told me that they were listening to the podcast, they didn't know we were on YouTube.
We have faces too.
We have faces. So if you're listening to this exclusively, you can also watch this on YouTube. And on Spotify as well, you can watch the video whilst listening.
Yeah.
If you don't want to be subjected to our faces, then you can also listen. So if you're watching this on YouTube and you think, I don't want to look at their faces, I just want to listen.
Yeah.
You can also do that via whatever. So all the links are in our Instagram bio.
Mm.
And also, if you have been listening for a while, which I'm assuming some people have, then please do leave us a nice rating, like 5 stars ideally, and amazing comments about how engaging and interesting we are.
Yeah, I think that's very good. Yeah.
Yeah.
They can use the same words. Maybe just change it a little bit so all the comments
if they all say engaging and interesting, that would be
Yeah, I think that's good. That's good. And 5 star. If you want to go for 4,
don't.
Why bother?
Yeah, just don't leave us.
Make yourself a cup of tea. Engage in some other activity. Yeah.
Yeah. Should we get on with the?
Should we live in the
podcast?
moment?
Yeah. All right.
The book for this episode is The Power of Now, and Salim will now give us some information about the author.
All right. Let's see.
I'll
if I
pass
can do
it
this
on
in
now
one.
to Salim.
How are we pronouncing the name today? Eckhart Tolle.
Tolle.
Are you sure?
Well, that's how I heard them say the name.
Who?
In an interview he did. He was
It
there.
was him.
He didn't correct them.
Eckhart Tolle.
Tolle.
All right. Let's do this.
He didn't correct them. I'm hoping that's not because he's nice. Internally, it's like it's just this one time. No one's going to watch this and think.
Okay, so Eckhart Tolle was born in 1948 in Germany. He's a renowned spiritual teacher and author celebrated for his transformative teachings on mindfulness and spiritual awakening. Following a profound inner shift at the age of 29, Tolle emerged from years of emotional turmoil to share his insights on living in the present moment and transcending the ego. His groundbreaking book, The Power of Now, catapulted him to global recognition, offering practical guidance for finding inner peace and liberation from suffering. Tolle's accessible approach to spirituality, which goes beyond religious boundaries, has inspired countless individuals worldwide, making him a prominent figure in contemporary self-help and spiritual literature. And the book we're doing this week is, as mentioned, The Power of Now.
Mm-hmm.
Few things I wanted to say. So firstly, when I first started reading and showed an interest, I remember I posted something on my Instagram asking people what books I should read, like non-fiction books.
Yeah.
And this one was mentioned by a number of people. So actually it was the first book that I remember downloading on Audible, because I don't read, even though this is a book club, but
This is not a book club.
Oh, sorry, this is,
There you go, yeah.
It's kind of.
Yeah.
Anyways, this was the first book and I read it, and at the time I used to like write mini reviews and whatever of all the books that I was reading.
On Instagram.
And I didn't review this book, right? I didn't write anything. And then fast forward a few years, we're here, we decided to do this again because someone recommended it. I started the book, and I have to admit that I didn't finish listening to it ahead of this podcast. I got like literally 9/10 of the way through it, and I couldn't continue because I feel personally, and I'll let you kind of summarize the book for people and whatever else. In fact, should we do that first before I start criticizing?
You've already started, so go on. No, I think that's a good idea.
Okay, fine. So I think there's some real wisdom in the book. The Power of Now, I mean, my summary of it, I guess, is just about living in the moment, defeating your ego, and like addressing and identifying what these things are within yourself. Very similar almost to Mo Godat's book that we did last episode. He talks about a lot of the same themes, and he does that. But with this book, and maybe it's because I was listening to it, but it's just like he'll say one really profound statement, and then move on and say something else and then move on. And there's no time to dwell or explore or elaborate these concepts or give examples. When he does give examples, I feel that they're very short. And he speaks almost in, I want to say like proverbs. The whole book is like that. And I find it very jarring because I feel like a lot of, this could just be a one-man podcast, but I can keep going. But I just feel like when sometimes when people do this whole self-help, personal development, growth thing, you say things in a really abstract way that kind of makes sense, but at the same time, like you don't substantiate it, and therefore there's no way of being able to verify if what you're saying is legit or not.
That's the impression you got.
Yes.
Even for the second time, you felt like...
Yeah, so that's the thing. So I read it the second time, and I instantly regretted it because I was like, I am subjected myself to this all over again.
Yeah, and that's why I'm really actually happy that that was your experience. Not that I didn't want you to enjoy it, but I think it's good because it may reflect some of the people who are listening as well. And imagine if both of us love this book and that person may not have felt enough representation on today's podcast, but now they can identify with you, and in this dialogue maybe...
I was going to say one more thing I remember is the first time I read it, I felt, like you're saying, I felt like, oh, you know what? Everyone's saying it's a great book. Maybe it is a great book. I'm just not like deep enough, or I don't understand what's going on. I'm not like spiritually aligned to these concepts. Then like the second time I read it, I was like, okay, I've read a lot of stuff now, a lot more than I had at that point. I should be able to resonate with what's going on here, but still there was nothing.
I get it.
And so I would like for the first half of this podcast, we change it up slightly, and we'll maybe call this like In Defense of the Power of Now. And you can convince me and talk through what he says in the book, because I think obviously we want to tell people what was actually in the book. But yeah, what makes it so great?
So maybe the first thing we can talk about is how the power of now is almost older than most of the books which are in this field right now. It was published in 1997 the first time. And although it wasn't as famous early on, it took off almost when Oprah Oprah basically found out about the book, and then later on they did a series with Eckhart. So that's how in 2008-ish it became the thing. Like almost all these references in pop culture to live in the moment, not seize the day, that's another thing, but like live in the moment, a lot of it actually comes back to this book. Like it was, I think, huge in shifting the culture. And now we have to say that, okay, since this book has been out, well, a lot of people have read it, a lot of people have used it, and have tried to now find better ways of saying it. So you may find this concept expressed in a way that suits you more in another book, like perhaps chapters of Mo's book, Mo Godat's book, was the same concept, where he says, now is all you have. That's literally this book, right? But that has come, years after. So that doesn't mean this is not a great book. This is the one that started it for many people. It brought this idea to the attention of so many people. And that's actually one of the reasons why I said that I told a lot of people read Mo Godat's book, because for a person who may not be able to read in this language, the same concept may have been reiterated in a way that's easier for other people to relate to. So that's one defense of this book. Like this is the starting point.
In terms of, I'm conscious of obviously the first half we do try and cover the topics and what's discussed. So I would say the first principle that he explores quite extensively is, as you say, that we only have the present. We only have the present and the present moment. One thing that he mentions that I wrote down, one of the few points that I was like, I like this. He said basically that there are no problems in the present. There are no problems now. There are only situations that need to be accepted and dealt with, or stuff that you need to, situations that need to be accepted, or things that you need to deal with, which if you can't deal with them now, then why worry, essentially? And he was talking just generally about our sort of emotional state or well-being in all situations, which I found to be very practical, because right now, anybody listening to this probably has a million things going on in their life and a million worries and anxieties about various different issues, be it like, relationship issues, family issues, whatever, financial even. But it's like in this very moment, while you're sitting and listening to this podcast, can you do anything about it? And if the answer is no, then why carry the emotional burden as well?
Yeah.
Which I found to be quite deep and profound, which is why I wrote it down.
Yeah. So maybe it's good actually to talk a little bit about this. This is the power of now, basically, right? So maybe we can, the whole thing about living in the moment and all of this, maybe we can open this up a little bit. And basically the idea is this, that we don't experience life in any moment other than this moment. Even future, our only interaction with it, it's when it comes and becomes part of the present moment. In other words, our experience is not of present, past, and future. It's just this moment. It's just this moment. Now this moment. Now this moment. This is basically where life happens. But because for many of us, we haven't managed to, well, either we've been programmed out of living in the moment, or we haven't found joy or peace in it, we try to find peace or joy or satisfaction in somewhere else. What does that mean? So I'm not happy where I am, but I'm like, if I get that job, then I will be happy, right? Or if I get that promotion, or if I have that thing. So what happens is I put the thing I need for my, let's say, satisfaction or happiness some point in the future. And because future is not what I'm experiencing right now, that means the present moment is like, I've made present moment not satisfactory for myself, because I said satisfaction is when I get there. So even though I'm living now, but with my mind, I keep thinking about that state in the future where it'll maybe be job. So that's like when you put a goal in the future and you put that goal as the source of your satisfaction, you're putting a magnet outside of the present moment that would keep taking you out of that moment, right? And I think this is something that by now almost everyone anyone who's been watching podcasts probably have heard this idea that you're even maybe sitting down with your friends, but all you're thinking about is, when that thing happens. And so this is one way in which, even though there is no other way other than living in the moment. Like if someone says live in the moment, Sadhguru always makes a fun, like, can you live any other moment? You're forced to live in the moment, but your mind is distracted somewhere else. So there are different things outside which take our attention away from this life right now. One of it is goals we have. One of it is things in the past that have upset us, we haven't moved on. So sometimes we're pulled towards the future. Sometimes we're pulled towards our past for things we haven't managed to, get over. Sometimes bad things that may happen in the future. So basically, we're here, this is all we have, but we're being pulled away from it. And he says, by trying to stop those magnets that are in other places and bringing yourself to now, that's where you can realize that, okay, I don't need external sources for my satisfaction. The present moment has enough to give me that peace. Does that make sense?
Yeah. No, I get you, but...
This is I knew that already.
No,
I get you, because the book has been discussed in a million different ways by now.
That's it's not that. It's more a case of a lot of these books, even the books that we've covered, a lot of them will say similar things in different ways and approach it from different angles. So, for example, James Clear in Atomic Habits, he talks about you want to get to X place, you're not going to get there overnight. There's no point, being like, oh, but I'm not at that yet. You have to work towards it and slowly, incrementally getting towards it. And that's a way of kind of bridging the gap between your unrealized future potential, which you want to achieve and you can achieve, versus where you're at now. Here he's talking about the fact that there's a frustration and you need to learn to let go, but obviously at the same time still work on yourself.
I get you, but this is deeper than that. In a fundamental way, it's different. And that's one of the reasons why it may be difficult for Eckhart to understand, because Eckhart is talking about a fundamentally different way of life. Atomic Habit, it's still this way of life. It just tries to help you. In Eckhart way, it's a complete shift.
It's like change the way you look at the world, basically.
And live completely. In Eckhart's way, external factors should not be the source of your peace, period. Full stop. That goal in the future, even though I will still work for it, at no point that's the reason for my life. No, I'm going to get my peace and joy from this moment. In other words, I don't need anything other than what I already have to have that peace.
Yeah.
And in a very fundamental way, this is different to anything else that is not, that tries to just help us be happy with the external world. This is saying at some point a person needs to decide for themselves, is there anything in the external world that you can add to yourself that then you would be qualified for having peace? Or as a human being, you're already worthy of having peace. And I think this is maybe the most fundamental point, that is there anything in the world that can give you add to your worth? And I think for most of us, the answer is yes. We feel that is yes. And that's why we're pulled away from the present moment.
There's also a part of the book where he talks about relationships.
Yeah.
That I found quite interesting because some of the things he mentions are things like letting go of your ego, having the ability to forgive and accept your partner in their current state of being, I guess, with all of their baggage.
Yeah.
Because with relationships, we often have this thing where things happen in a relationship and that becomes a part of the present dynamic or understanding between a couple.
Yeah.
But then he also, I think he said, if I'm not mistaken, he was talking at one point about how you might be in this space of acceptance and growth and, you know, that feeling content within. But if your partner is not there, then it's a recipe for disaster, because you're unable then to mend and work forward together.
I get you. The chapter relationship, I think it's very interesting. It's a very good chapter. There's quite a couple of things that, like this one. In Islam, actually, we have a saying that says, fight only happens when both parties are not enlightened. So even if one person is enlightened, it wouldn't lead to a fight. So a person who has reached that place would know how to handle, even if a person is not on their journey of growth. You know what I mean? So that part may not be like a necessary thing that only both of you have to be on the journey together. But the relationship chapter was very interesting. Maybe from there we can actually move to a book that you may have liked more and use that to explain some of the ideas in this book. This Michael Singer one.
Oh, the surrender.
Yeah. Because I feel like there's
surrender experiment.
The surrender experiment, and he's got the untethered soul.
Yeah.
I feel like he does a brilliant job of explaining a concept in this book, which is called the pain body. Right? Eckhart has this point that anything in your past that you didn't manage to move on, like basically, if we think about past of the present moments that are now gone, any of those present moments that at that moment you did not accept, it was either too painful or it was not to your liking, you kind of kept it within you. And now at any point, if something triggers that or reminds you of that, suddenly you find yourself acting like you're in that moment, right? It's like as if you're carrying a collection of moments you did not like, which are ready at any point to be triggered by someone. And this is very similar to what Michael Singer as well describes in that book, that he says you have to look at life as a series of scenes being shown on a TV. And every scene that you accept will go, the next scene will come on the TV. And so like that, the experience is pleasant. But any scene that comes and you're not allowing it to either easily go, like you either like it too much and you hold on to it, or it's too bad, you like try to push it away, it stays on the TV. So like when the next moment comes, the next scene is there, but also the previous one. So that's why your experience of life is no longer fresh, because now you're looking at life through all these different scenes that you have not let go of. Eckhart calls this the pain body. So he says you're carrying all of this with you. It's almost as if you got another body made completely out of moments you did not like, or moments you liked so much but they left, you didn't let go. And so now you're experiencing life through these. Hala, if a person is not enlightened, according to their words, the person they fall in love with, he says, and Michael Singer also says the same, is a person that doesn't, at least in those early years, trigger your pain body. It doesn't bring any of those bad memories out. You're like, oh, I'm happy next to this person. I feel alive. Why? Because this person doesn't trigger any of those. But he says, give people enough time to live together. Ultimately, they'll end up triggering something from the past. themselves, and the way they brush the teeth reminds this person, oh, my uncle who I hated brushed the teeth. So that's why he says the only ultimate way for two people to be able to be in a relationship is to really heal that pain body or get rid of it. Then they wouldn't keep triggering themselves. So that's one thing. And another thing, Eckhart says that as long as you can't find peace in the present moment, you're always searching for it somewhere. So sometimes you hook onto your partner in order to get some joy. So your partner becomes your drug, basically. And that's another dangerous situation, because you want your drug always with you and the way you want it. So if your partner starts changing or starts, you will keep manipulating them so that they remain the way you want them to. So you can manipulate them. So I think that may be a way to bridge this book to the Michael Singer book. Concept of pain body to that.
You're really trying to sell it by bringing up books that I like, to be like, oh, he said the same thing.
It's a great book. The Power of Now is a great book.
I just don't get it. I like, again, I understand.
That's totally fine.
No, this is the thing. Like, I'm okay with that, but what I don't understand, I guess, is that, like, as you say, a lot of these things, when Mo Godat said a lot of the same things that Eckhart Tolle is saying in this, I was like, yep, I love it, it's brilliant, whatever, yeah. I can work with this. Then here, there was like a very jarringness about it, and I'm trying not to bleed into the second half of the podcast, because I wanted to kind of bring in, the criticism, critiques, whatever. But I just feel like there's, maybe part of it is because he just makes it very difficult in a way. Like, there's a lot of work that it's nothing and also everything at the same time. Like the notion of, just let go of the past. Don't hold on to this, that, whatever. Don't allow things to trigger you. Don't be attached to your partner in that way. Yeah, simple. Just live like, this sage-like being. But the reality is, it's not that easy. And I think that's the thing. And he keeps laboring on these points.
Two things.
Yeah.
It's not easy, 100%.
Okay.
Right? And then here it says over 5 million copies sold. It's probably an old number by now. It must be even more.
Yeah.
How many of those people are now living in the moment? That would be an interesting study, which means a lot of people may fall in love. But yeah, definitely it's not easy. But it's also not easy when Mo Godat says it. Right? So the application does not become easier no matter how it's said. It's really a difficult thing. But what does Mo Godat do to make it more readable, for example, is that he lowers the concept and tries to, although sometimes he keeps it high. Like, for example, that video game chapter, the concept was still at its high place. But in some places in the book, he lowers it to a place where everyone can benefit from it. And that's why it's easier to understand. It's like, for example, imagine a mathematic formula when you want to understand it there, or you understand that formula when it's used for a specific case. Can I give you a funny example, by the way?
Go on.
I don't know, how did you learn math? Like, was it because I learned math a few years here and a few years in another country, but often it had a lot of these examples. For example, talking like childhood mathematics, right? Let's say Salim has 2 oranges. Javad brings 2 oranges. How many oranges do they have now? It's like 4. I heard this story so profound. It had to do with, like, basically how some people really don't have the privileges others have, A teacher goes to this village and he starts asking them question that, okay, imagine someone has 2 oranges and the other friend gives them 2 oranges. How many oranges do they have? And he sees that all the children are looking at him puzzled. And he's like, these village kids, they don't know maths. They must be really dumb. And then he afterwards talks to them when it is, they don't know what an orange is. They'd never had an orange.
Wow.
They'd never had that fruit.
Yeah.
And this is very interesting. I mean, did the concept not make sense? Was the concept wrong? No, we usually as human beings understand concepts easier when it comes to us through an example that we're very familiar with. And if you change, for example, potato to a fruit I haven't had, I'm like, what is that? So that's why the Power of Now is talking about these concepts often at a level of the formula.
Yeah.
Okay. And now, take one point here, bring it down, find an application for it. You can even write a book with that. And if on this book, you can create 10 more books.
Yeah, I understand.
But that's why also Eckhart is deep, because to speak at this level, it's not any person's task.
So in a couple of minutes, are there any other concepts in the book that you wanted to explore or bring up?
Yeah, I think so. So the main thing, we talked about it, living that present moment is all we have. The fact that pain body is what disrupts this present moment for us. Because things happen now, trigger something else, and we give a reaction that this moment really does not deserve. And he also talks about ways of, as these magnets are pulling us away from the present moments, how to bring us back to the present moment. So, for example, he talks about meditation as a practice in that capacity, and it as a way to keep anchoring yourself in the present moment. And I love the word anchor, because it means there are these waves that are going to take us away from where we are right now. So we need these things to anchor ourselves, present moment. He talks about breathing exercises, feeling your inner body, etc. That's, I think, something interesting about the book. And also this idea in the book, which is so profound. The idea that there is within you something that if you shine it at some of the problems or worries you have, it can melt them. So he says, I'm jealous. He says, what's the best way to deal with your jealousy? He says, become aware that I'm jealous. And if there's two states we can either have, either I'm living the jealousy, and I'm feeling it. Oh, why is Salim, for example, more handsome than me? Why is he like that? Oh, and I'm there. And sometimes, he says, try to disidentify from that and watch it. Oh, I find within myself thoughts and emotions of jealousy. And this, although that was an interesting point we should have mentioned about the book as well, that he talks about the importance of thoughts. Okay, you're not your thoughts, you're not your emotions, but this is a good example of talking about it. Yeah, he says the moment you find this deeper place inside and you look at the thoughts and emotions, that shining that at those thoughts and emotions is the best way to heal them. And this is a profound idea. So, half an hour.
Just about. Let's get through the ratings. So, readability.
I really enjoyed it. I would give it a 9. By the way, one thing we failed to mention, the book is actually structured in terms of question and answers.
Yes, yeah.
So they have chosen 2 Salims in the book, although in the audiobook there were 2 Salims. Male
and female.
Yeah, and the idea was this, that every chapter started with one of them saying, I don't get this, I don't like this. And he would explain, Yeah. So they had incorporated the Salim within the book.
They anticipated this podcast.
They anticipated, but it still didn't help you. You didn't identify with those people who were asking those questions.
No, because I thought their questions were stupid as well.
Oh wow, wow!
I'm not easy to please, but in terms of readability, as I said, I think I gave it a 3 or a 4. Obviously, we did listen, or I did listen rather than read.
Yeah.
But I think it's a little bit too dense and. As you said, he speaks at the level of the formula. So that's not my vibe, I guess, when it comes to these things.
Yeah, this is more maybe of a bedside table book. You read a few pages before you go to...
Exactly, yeah. You read one of the chapters, or not even a chapter, one of the... Page?
With the other book, A New Earth, that's literally what I would do. Read a page,
and
you can't take it more than a page. Which... some books are to be, taken like that.
Yeah, like the dictionary.
Some books are... Sorry?
Like the dictionary.
There you go. Yeah.
I mean, that's the only thing I can compare
actually,
it to.
I would read it faster because I was so excited to see what comes next.
It's usually in alphabetical order.
No, the word.
As a spoiler.
I know it's the same, but which word is it? Those were pre-Instagram days, man. Reading dictionary to remain. I would also sometimes, this is pre-internet as well, read Argos catalog just because there was nothing else to do.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's been a hard life for you.
But I'm living in the moment. I healed that pain body. Argos catalog was fun. I don't know why.
It was
Argos.
Especially in Argos where they had the pages all laminated.
There you go.
And you could flick through really quickly.
There you go.
Practicality of the book.
Practical, if someone wants to apply it to their life situations, I don't know. But for life, it's the most important thing ever. So.
Yeah, so I was torn in terms of the rating for this. I gave it a 5 because I feel as you say, like if you are able to practically apply this stuff, then that's fine. But I don't think he necessarily entirely gives you the roadmap. Like you mentioned, he'll give examples of breathing techniques and things to think about and whatever else.
That's a new earth for those type of
really?
practice. Yeah, he takes this teaching into a new earth, into like more practical. How can I live life like that? So if people want more practical, a new earth is I actually, funnily, I read A New Earth first.
Okay.
It's a much better place to start if someone doesn't like too deep stuff. Yeah.
Let's give it like 3-4 seasons of the podcast, and maybe we
go
can.
For A New Earth.
I'm a bit scarred at the moment from my second time
reading
Eckhart
does not watch this. Okay.
Depth, the quality of insight.
Oh, 10.
Yeah.
So far, this is the deepest book we've read in this podcast.
Yeah, I won't fault it. Like, I'll give it a 9 simply because maybe I didn't even get everything that was in there. Yeah. I think there is a lot. Like, that's the thing. It's almost too much. Like I said, it's not. When all my criticism of the book is not based on the quality of the content or the insight. It's just the presentation of it.
Yeah.
Because 100% everything he's saying makes sense, but it's just almost too much for me, I think, at one one go.
Yeah, but I think I get your point. I really get your point, but I would really, at least in my humble opinion, among the many books I've seen, this is the deepest, especially in those places where the gate becomes very fuzzy. He still keeps a very good balance of remaining.
But to be honest, the fact that the number of people that generally recommend it and read it and talk about it, I think means that this book does resonate with a lot of people. And I'm glad. It's a good thing. I mean, 5 million copies sold, as you mentioned, is not a small number.
Yeah.
So
50 languages.
Clearly there are people.
Although that says that it's resonated with people, but that doesn't say much about the depth. Because but the depth is still very high too.
All right, so to kick off the epilogue, the second half of the podcast, I wanted to start I guess by just asking one simple question, which is about how we actually begin to do this, because I think it's all well and good talking about the power of now and living in the moment and whatever else, and disidentifying from our past and our future and whatever else. But I feel like that's a struggle that this is basically answering the fundamental problem that we as human beings have. How do we begin to actually implement and do this? Because I would love to live the version of reality that Eckhart Tolle talks about. That would be amazing. But I've read it twice now, well, 1.9 times. I can't see myself necessarily any closer. I do remember, actually, when you spoke about this, you spoke about, oh God, the thought has left me. I'm not in the now. What did you speak about? You have to fill the silence while I think. Just start speaking and then I'll...
Yeah, no, I was just lost in the present moment, enjoying the sound of the birds coming outside.
It's fully gone. Let's just move on.
It's okay.
So do you want to begin to answer or address that point? Just about generally past, future, and beginning to be in the now.
Okay, very good. Yeah, so I think... it even says a guide to spiritual enlightenment. Now, spirituality is really like a word thrown a lot in the culture. Some people, it's everything for them. Some people almost have like an allergic reaction to it. Now, spirituality again. But whatever we want to call it, I think for every person, for the majority of people, unless they are really talented at distracting themselves from life, there will come a moment. There's different ways into this moment, but there will definitely come a moment where you realize that life as I know it, which for many of us is we're playing this character. He calls it the ego. We realize playing this life as an ego will not give me that meaningful satisfaction that I want. That moment is a pivotal moment for every person's life, and there are different ways to it. Sometimes it's reading a book. Sometimes, like Mo, is when you've got everything the ego wanted. You've got the pool, all of that. You're like, I'm still not happy. Is this all there is to life? For someone, it's a suffering. They lose a loved one, and they're like, okay, with this person out of the game, I don't think this game will ever give me that meaningful thing I want. So ultimately, that's what we're talking about. That moment in any person's life where at least for a few seconds, like, ooh, is this all there is? Is this character that wakes up every day, has dreams about his career or her career, relationships? And so that moment, that realization, then you, if you don't distract yourself from it, you start working with it. You slowly, it's like when you have, for example, a photo, you know these things that you scratch and reveals something underneath? Initially, you may not even know there's a photo underneath it, but the moment there's one crack on it, and that's that realization, is this all life is? Then if you don't distract yourself, keep scratching, another layer of your own presence will reveal to you. And that's what he, for example, calls living life not at the level of thought and ego, but that consciousness behind it. That's what Mo Godat is saying, that this character that you think you are is not who you are. This is a character you're playing in a video game. But who are you? You're that one there. Hope, if we accept that, and not everyone will come to this realization easily, but once a person accepts that, okay, if this is not who I am, then also means that the life around me, I've understood it wrong. I was playing a game. If this is a character in a game, all these things I was achieving, these are things you achieve in a game. It's like the wins in a Monopoly. As soon as you let go of the Monopoly, they mean nothing. So then you're like, okay, if this life is all of us sitting at a Monopoly table, and that job, that degree, that house, these are the gains on the Monopoly, what are the real gains? What are the things that's not just for me as a player, but for me as a being? You know what I mean? Because imagine if all our gains is the gains on the Monopoly, the hotels and whatnot, the moment the game is over, like I have nothing. But if, as I'm playing the game, I also make a friendship with the person next to me, like I'm kind to them, we make that relationship. Even once the Monopoly is over, I'm still happy. I became friends with the person next to me. I got to know. So then you start looking for those type of things. What does my person, not my character, want? And then you realize, wow, all it wants is already there. I was chasing for my joy in the video game, that is this life as we know it, but there's another level of life in which I already have all I want. And so it's accessing that becomes enlightenment or spirituality. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. And you reminded me, what I was going to say is that the first time I read it, I remember this concept of being the watcher, being the person behind that is observing your thoughts. And I found myself at times of being angry, for example, being able to look at myself and see anger inside me, but not at a core level, but you can actually physically detach and say there is anger in my body or in my mind or whatever, but that's not me. I can still choose to be at peace. What I was going to say is that's almost as far as it went for me, just identifying and not actually fully being able to withdraw and almost progress through the levels of this self-understanding realization thing that he's promoting.
So that's exactly what I'm saying. See, the moment you disidentify from the let's say this is the thought and the emotions or what's not. Let's say the moment you disidentify with that, you're also doing something else. You're like, oh, that's not who I am. Because previously, I thought I'm this guy who gets angry, who gets this, who gets that, who wants this, who wants that. The moment you do this, something starts for you. You realize who you're not. At least in this moment, I'm not that angry, but I'm watching the anger. If I'm watching it, it's not who I am. Even for Eckhart, that's how he starts. He says at some point, I was like, I can't live with myself. And he said, I can't live with myself? There's two of us. So this thing that I call myself and I can't live with it, that's not me. Then he needs to figure out who he is. Now, the figuring out who I am is not going to be the easy part. It's like, for example, in our tradition, we have teachings that say the most important thing in your life that you could do is to figure who you are. There's like another tradition that says, if there's one thing that if you manage your whole life to just gain this one thing, you've done your job, is to figure out who you are. And those moments like that, when you're watching yourself be angry, that's like, okay. Now, if there's extra motivation within you to now figure out, okay, what is this thing that's watching that? then perfect. A journey starts. And that journey is so fascinating. But often, as you said, what happens is that it's a moment we get this, so we'll go back to it. Or we find this distance, and I feel like a lot of people who've done meditation for long or read these books, they're in this place in which they know they're not the emotions and thoughts, but they still have not figured much about what this thing is that I am. Right? Okay, I know I'm not those emotions and thoughts, but what is this blob of, thoughtless, emotionless consciousness that I am? Am I happy being that? And that's where we know that the journey hasn't gone to level 2. It's not meant to be easy, but there's definitely ways to go about doing that. But I feel like maybe the main trouble we have is that at some point we need to accept that what we want in life is not to be chased outside. Because see, do you know one of the reasons that pushes us back to identifying with the thoughts and emotion is what? A lot of the things we love or can only be loved if you're there. And it's the ego that gets angry and jealous, but it's also the ego that really enjoys that promotion. It's the ego that really enjoys that massive house or whatever, or being better than the other podcasts. So because some of the things that give us joy are also through the ego, a lot of times we jump back to the ego, even though it means more jealousy, it means anger, right? Till a point comes in our life where we're like, you know what, forget about all of its joys. I let the whole thing go. But for most of us, the joys of the ego take us back to the ego, the distractions, the pull, also the culture around us that doesn't help us much. But
again, this is my issue with this, is that when it comes to how we exist in a family, in a relationship, in a community, as you say, in a work environment, for example, we're bound by our physical selves. We're bound by our physical existence in terms of our need for sustenance and providing a roof over our heads and whatever else. So at some level, we have to be driven in those ways.
Okay.
Do you get what I'm saying? I
get what you're saying. So now what you're saying is this, if I can use the metaphor of video game, saying we have to play this character. And the character needs to go to work, because if the character doesn't go to work, the character will see that tomorrow there's no milk in the fridge.
Yeah.
Right? Okay. He doesn't say don't do those things. He's saying there's 2 ways of even playing the game. And the character can either go to work and thinking this is all there is and then go with the ego to work, or you can go to the work not as an ego. And imagine, and I've tried this, by the way. Let me give you an example. It sounds a little bit silly. A lot of the times, let's say you want to do an application that's really important for you. Like, the ego is like, if I don't get this application, life is gonna end. Everything is gonna collapse, because ego is like that. It can collapse very soon. And that's why I usually find the process of application, if it's for myself, it's like that's something I don't want to do. It's like so stressful. I was applying for someone else, exactly the same procedure, and I was like, the outcome doesn't really matter for me. I'm going to be okay no matter what. Like, I really hope they get it, but it's not as crucial for my ego if they get it. So I went through the whole process, and I was like, I'm not that invested in the outcome. And it was such a smooth process. I was like, wow, so you can come to this office, do all of this paperwork and not start the fight, not hate everybody, and still have a fun time? And that was one of those moments that is, okay, so I could do the same thing for me as well if my ego is not so scared of what's going to happen in that application, if I don't think my whole life depends on this.
Yeah.
Right? So a lot of it actually goes back to this, that the ego is scared. Ego thinks ego needs to protect us. And the smallest thing that goes wrong, that's one of the reasons Mo go that says control is big for us. Because ego says, I'm alone in this world, I need to control everything. But Eckhart would say, once the ego goes away, then this other presence comes that's not as scared as about this particular outcome. It knows that even if this thing doesn't work out, there'll be another way. We'll be ultimately fine.
Yeah.
Right? So that's the thing. You do all the work, everything, but not from this place of my everything depends on this. It's like, imagine you really believe that hotel in Monopoly is yours. And if someone wants to take it away from you, it's like you're taking me. This is a game, I'll play it.
Yeah.
Although the true spirituality, which I think he speaks about in the New Earth, is to still be in the game, play it really seriously, but know that this is not life. This is just a game. My teacher once said, you have to be in this world. He said there are two types of people. You have to be the third. He said some people play the game as if it's all there is.
Yeah.
Some people realize it's a game. They sit down. Why should I work? It's all a game. And a lot of people who have no motivation to engage in life, it's not life they're not motivated for. It's this game. A lot of people who are, I feel like, low, they're like, I don't want to play this game. That's what they mean. They've realized it's stupid. But he said the third way, which is I think the spiritual way, is you realize it's a game, but you still play it very seriously. But like who? Like an actor. An actor that may engage in a fighting scene very seriously, but the moment the director says cut, puts the sword down and goes. You know? And I go into work, I try to work for everything, but the moment I have to go, okay, I'm gone. You know? So I think that's maybe the good balance.
I wanted to ask you as well, usually in the second half of the podcast, you will mainly kind of critique and criticize and find flaws in the arguments presented. Sometimes quite scathing, at other times, respectfully, obviously. Yeah. Other times, you're quite complimentary. With a book like this, did you find any flaws or anything that you found incongruent with your understanding of spiritual enlightenment or the reality of life in general?
Yeah, so not incongruent, but I would say that he doesn't mention the whole picture. And I think that's why a lot of people find it difficult to then get there. They know it, they like it, but it may not happen for a lot of people. And I feel like because this is not a one person's journey, it's not something a person can do on their own. Life is a relationship with the source of life. And enlightenment, or getting to that place where we manage to always be there, detached from the thoughts, pain, ego, and all of that, but also not remain in that limbo. Find home. Find who we really are. It seems like that part of it, it's not something we can do on our own. We have to be taken home. We can either use God or whatever. I don't want to get into these discussions. It's obvious what I mean. I mean, that reality who created life, the source of life. It's not even created life as if life is separated from it. It's the core of life, the fountain of being. It's that reality that can take you home and help you not being stuck there. So some of the, with a lot of spiritual teachers, this happens. They one day or through an incident, they find themselves there, and then they're trying to trace their way back. But in reality, they didn't get there. They were taken. I ask Eckhart, you were 29, you were depressed. How did you become enlightened? You hadn't read your own book, right? He even says, I didn't even know what happened to me when he found it. It was given to him. Why is it given to him? So that he comes and tells people there is such a state. But the mistake someone could make is, I got there, now I can tell you how to get there too. No one can tell others how to get there. All we can do is share our own experiences with other people, but ultimately, this is one part which I think it's really lacking in books like this, and if someone pays attention to this, their journey will be much easier. Ask that source of life to take me back home. Like, you know how I said the reason why a lot of us fall back into the ego, because we're so scared. The ego is so scared. I can't take care of myself. I need something to be happy. I need this. I need that. The only point in which this will go away, and it wouldn't lead to another thing that this is all pointless if it's all a game, is if you realize it is a game, but it's not a game that's pointless. It's a game in which it gives you the opportunity to start a relationship with the source of life. And imagine if it's just you and a monopoly. You realize life is a monopoly. What's the point of it? Well, you realize, it's a monopoly, but there's also another person in the room, right? God or whatever you want to call it. And this game was my opportunity to have a relationship. I'm not alone. This is so important. You're not going on this journey yourself. There's another reality, and how it feels is that being in a relationship with that reality is 1,000,000 times more fun than anything we've experienced in this world. So that's one thing that I would think would complement the book.
There's one practical tip that he mentions in the book, which I found, or I think resonates with kind of what you're saying. He talks about the negative attachment that people have to words. So he even mentions a concept like God, for example.
Yeah.
He says that when you hear that word, for example, or when an atheist or a Buddhist or whoever, it means a million things.
Yeah.
And so he's even like, he says that when he's talking about specific concepts, try to strip back all the dogma and the kind of misuse of these terms by religious authorities and whoever else, and anyone that's corrupted these things for you, and get back to the essence. And I found that quite a pure way of looking at the world. Do you know what I mean? Because unfortunately that's what's happened, right? Everything's become so riddled with dogma that we can't actually use these terms or connect with these terms without it being perceived in a certain way.
Exactly. And that's the problem, because I can imagine like an atheist or an ex-Muslim hearing the word God. Ooh, I can see the images almost in their head. And none of them are what comes to my mind, for example, when I hear about God, you know? So we have that problem for sure. And it's really sad because that reality, who's unfortunately has the worst PR in the world, it's very essential. And I think maybe the best way to talk about that reality, well, look, I happily call God. I don't have a problem with that. Although at some point in my life, I really had. Like, it was really tainted by the acts of religious people for me. But now I'm okay with it. Like, maybe the best way of that is to find that reality in relationships to ourselves. Like, God is not that extra thing out there that created the world. No, God is, the source of me. Like, I need to find God in a relationship with myself. And so maybe in another book we can talk about that. Then you realize that I don't care about other people. If even no one in the world existed, I still, just looking within me, would have found that there has to be another being out there. And like even a lot of, for example, self-knowledge, who am I, goes back to that. Because we as people who think we can control everything, very soon in life, if we're observant, we realize there's so many things about myself I don't know, I don't control. Like, I feel like if I get this, I'll be happy. I go there, I'm not happy. I feel like, what am I? Like, who am I? The more you think about that, through yourself, you can then find, like, I'm in relationship with something else.
I think this is the bit where people get lost, maybe where I got lost as well, where, okay, I can begin to disidentify with my life and my situation, whatever, but then there's almost a void on the other side, because like you said, figuring out who you are or creating that relationship that you're talking about, that connection, we don't know, it's almost emptiness, because like it's almost like our radio frequency is not even on the right station, so it's just white noise. So it's a lot easier being in the ego, being in the self, being in the world, being the actor, than actually cut and then what happens now, because you're just standing in a void. And that's I think that's the scary reality for a lot of people. And then when we talk about spiritual enlightenment, as it says on the cover of this book, really speaking, that there's a lot of questions that need to be answered by yourself. And like you said, it's not something that somebody can tell you. You can get advice, you can think, but it all has to come from within. You have to do it
yourself. No, I absolutely get you. That void is the reason most people jump back to the ego. And that void is crazy. Although for some people who are, some people live at the void, by the way.
Really?
I've been with people who live in the void, and it's really painful. It's imagine, as you said, like you explained it very beautifully, like you no longer get the frequency of the ego, you haven't managed to get your home, like the actual frequency of God or whatever, and you're in the middle with no frequency going, and you're just like, okay, it's like being stuck in a black hole.
It's like when you're on the M1 in between cities, and you're just not picking up anything.
M1 is even worse than black hole.
I was gonna say, like maybe we're doing a disservice to black holes here.
But the thing is this, Salim. The void doesn't go anywhere. The void is beneath every moment of our life, and all we're doing, it's like, imagine. I don't want to go there. It may be like not. I had this beautiful, funny example, which is like maybe in the bloopers or something. But the void is always there. That's why life is not fully satisfactory. And all we're doing is distracting ourselves. We're escaping to something, to not feel the void. But the reality is that the void is still messing everything up. And that's why we're not enjoying our children. We're not enjoying parks, in the sense that, like, when I say we don't enjoy parks, someone may say, what do you mean? I enjoy parks. Oh, wait till you see what parks are. Wait till you see, like imagine those like honeymoon periods we had with our partners. We had a honeymoon period with life as well, as kids running around. Have you seen kids? They're like always running. It's like life for them is a beautiful game. Oh, I mean, if they're in a good condition, not like David Goggins, poor thing. That's life. That's not for kids. You need this thing, the void. We did not really fully escape from it. We accepted it. Asan, it's like we've accepted that, yes, adults have to be grumpy, life needs to look like this.
I was going to ask, if I can interrupt you, at what point do you think that enters our lives? Because like you say, kids, newborns don't have this sense of ego. And in fact, I'm remembering now Mo Godat talks about the development of the ego in life and whatever else. But at what point did we become so engrossed in life? Or is it just something that from day one we've always had? And I guess the follow-on from that is there a way of nurturing kids in such a way that they are able to live in a way that we're describing here? Or do you have to hit adulthood and then learn to disassociate?
100%. In fact, the thing is, the formation of ego per se is not really a problem. And even for who we are, it's good to get into the game. But if the child is in a family in which the adults in the family have gotten out of the void, then the kid will get through their ego and naturally come out of it very beautifully. Like, it will be such a smooth transition, you know? And in fact, we can say that an unhealthy ego will never be formed, right? Certain things will happen because you need to feel a sense of separation to then find that place back. That's part of it, that's why we're here, I think. But the best thing I think parents could have done for their children was themselves to have found it. And as long as we're always in this place between the void and the ego and we haven't found that place, we ultimately, whatever we do, will push the kid to the ego. And there's, you know what I mean? It's And that's why for many parents, it's not anyone's fault, right? It's not a judgment. No one did it for us. So culture, parents, society, school is what programs people into this unhealthy ego. And it's like the way the world is set right now, it's guaranteed for 99% of people to almost be pushed into this unhealthy way of living. And this is why I think like people like Eckhart at some point try to speak a little bit more dull, because in order to break free from all of this, it's not about, let's live a little bit of a better life. Let's get more, let's procrastinate less. Let's make a few more goals. Let's lose weight. Nah, it needs a fundamental shift in the way we live. And this needs to happen at the level of society. And we genuinely need to accept that this thing we've called life, and we accepted it, is not life. Life is much better. And we need to collectively start thinking together, how can we envision a different life? You know that book, The Myth of Normal? That's one of the themes, for example, Gabor also talks about. He says this thing we call normal is not normal. Life is not meant to be like this. You know, suicide rates going so high, depression rates over the roof. Generally people, feeling like everyone is feeling. I feel like a lot of people who, for example, get depression, these are some of the most beautiful souls out there. You know,
there's that acronym, weird, westernized, industrialized, Western industrialized, democratic. I can't remember the order. I've heard that mentioned in a few books now when they talk about Western societies. And I think it's so apt because, like you said, we've come to accept our circumstances as normal, our way of living, our understanding of reality. But like you're saying, it's not normal. There's a fundamental almost flaw in the way we exist. That I think a lot of these thinkers and writers and philosophers are trying to address.
And now the problem is universal almost. You know, it's everywhere, but a lot of people are feeling it. A lot of people are feeling life should not be like this. And I feel like all of these are maybe where the plant is getting out of the ground. You know? And so even, for example, people, that's the interesting thing of like how common this idea has become. And it seems like, I feel like really humanity is in, like, it's much more accepted, like a concept like this. But I feel like now, maybe, how much time do we have? Okay, we can keep that for another.
Wrapping up, yeah.
We can keep that.
How deep were you going to go?
No, that was quite deep.
Okay.
Yeah, we can keep
I can lighten it completely. I have a question I've been burning to ask.
Okay,
you.
let's go for that then.
Completely, I mean, it's related-ish. You mentioned Monopoly like 6-7 times now.
Yeah.
What's your favorite set? I've been wanting to ask you the whole podcast. I don't know why. Like, do you know what color, or do you not play Monopoly? Is it just
no, I play Monopoly, but it hasn't got to a place
when you spoke about owning that hotel, for me, that's Regent Street.
Oh,
like,
is
when
it?
I get a hotel on Regent Street,
you're
I'm
I've
good.
made it in
the
life.
green set is like my default go-to. Do you have one?
No, not really. For me, it's like I want them all.
Oh, really?
Yeah, a new person. Really,
you got to start building somewhere.
Yeah.
Do you not have like a?
No. I'm like this. I'm like, wherever I get an opportunity, I get in, and I'll start building my way from there. But obviously, the more expensive one, like, who wouldn't want that? But have you seen, like, we're almost a different person when we play Monopoly, or at least a lot of people are. Like, and that's so interesting, because the difference between who we normally are and what we show in a Monopoly or in different games, it's really the difference between where we are right now, where we can be. Like, in Monopoly, it goes one level forward, but there's also another level it can go back.
That's why I asked the question, because I knew you'd have like a deep...
I ruined it. You wanted to end on a light note. I ruined it.
Stop pulling us back. I'm trying to... Yeah, no, I think, like... Unfortunately, like with all of the books that we cover, these podcasts could be a lot longer.
Yeah.
And there are so many themes, but I think it's nice to dabble, and obviously we want this to be almost a companion to people reading the books.
Yeah.
And we want to explore the themes and start conversations, I guess, around these things and get people thinking in a supplementary way to the content of the book. But yeah, let's I guess call it a day there.
Yeah.
For next time, we had a brief discussion, and we wanted to kind of change the tone a little bit. So this book, I have no problem with reading again or listening to again. It's Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss. It's a book by a former FBI negotiator who talks about, I guess, ways to deal with people in terms of negotiating and doing deals and everything, basically, like these amazing tips and tricks and just means of existing and living and interacting with people and communicating generally, and the stories throughout are fascinating. I mean, I love the book a lot. It's going to be interesting because there are things that I want to address in the second half which we can discuss, but yeah, that's the next book. Have you read it, by the way, before?
No, that's why I'm splitting the difference. No, I actually don't split the difference, but I've never read the book. Yeah. So I'm excited to read it, because I remember you mentioning it a while ago, and you really liked it.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's go for it. Never split the difference.
Never split the difference. And that's a wrap for this episode.
And do not forget, this is not a book club.
That was good. That's like 7, 8 out of 10.
Yeah, I'm not going to say anything. I'm not going to ruin it.
No, we'll take it. Let's call it a day.